Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Okay, we're gonna just jump right in today, because we are embarking on a genuinely thrilling journey. We're exploring a space where ancient history, unexplained science, and deep, profound faith basically collide. It'll completely challenge how you see the world. We're unpacking the mysteries of the Jagannath Temple in Puri, India. And look, this isn't just some architectural marvel. It's an active, pulsing center of anomalies that have literally baffled empires, scientists, and historians for centuries. So get comfortable, because what we're looking at today is absolutely fascinating.
Picture this. It's June 15th, 2015. An entire city is deliberately plunged into total darkness at exactly midnight. The power grid completely cut off. There's this strict, almost curfew-like silence over the streets. Now, inside the temple's inner sanctum, you have these priests, and their families have been doing this for generations, right? But they are completely blindfolded. Their hands are wrapped in these thick, heavy gloves, and in pitch-black darkness, relying entirely on muffled touch, they're tasked with transferring something incredibly secretive from the old wooden idols of the deity to newly carved ones. It's a ritual they call Nabaka Lebara.
So, that really begs the question, doesn't it? What exactly are these blindfolded priests transferring in the dead of night? What could possibly be so potent, so deeply guarded that you literally need to black out an entire city and use sensory deprivation just to move it from one wooden casing to another? Well, locals and ancient texts call it the Brahma Padartha. Okay, so what actually is this thing? Traditional lore tells us that the Brahma Padartha is the enigmatic, indestructible, pulsating heart of Lord Krishna. But here's the thing. It is not treated as just some symbolic relic. Not at all. It's treated as a highly volatile source of energy. The consequences of just looking at it or touching it with bare hands, they're said to be totally lethal. In fact, during this transfer, the temple is surrounded by heavy CRPF security, like an actual modern paramilitary force guarding this ancient secret. And there's this chilling account from the 2015 ritual where a priest allegedly bypassed the safety protocols and touched the core. According to the stories, he instantly fainted and completely lost his mind. He was left mentally unstable by just the sheer force of whatever this object actually is. Now, here's where it gets super interesting, because we have two totally different ways of looking at this. On one hand, you have the deeply held traditional belief that this is the literal, living heart of Lord Krishna, and it's constantly emitting this powerful divine energy. On the flip side, you have a really intriguing modern theory from archaeologist Praveen Mohan. He theorizes that this object might actually be a highly advanced, ancient technological device, specifically an electromagnetic arc reactor. And if you look at it from that perspective, the reason the idols have to be carved entirely out of wood actually makes total logical sense. Wood is non-conductive, right? It acts as an insulator to contain the massive, lethal electromagnetic energy radiating from the core. Now, we're not here to say which side is right or wrong, but you gotta admit, it's wild how this one object completely defies a simple explanation. And just to add another layer to all this, consider this chilling eyewitness claim from about 50 years ago. So this man claimed he actually managed to see the Brahma Padartha, but he didn't describe it as a solid organ. He described it as a flowing liquid that looked almost like silver. And this liquid is supposedly so potent that it physically degrades the wooden idols from the inside out over time, which, by the way, perfectly explains why they have to do that 12-year replacement ritual in the first place. Even wilder, he claimed that the second this substance is exposed to light, it starts spinning violently like a chakra and emits these intense physical vibrations. I mean, that perfectly illustrates why the transfer absolutely has to happen in the absolute dark of a citywide blackout. So where did this actually come from? Let's trace the mythological origins back to the Great War of the Mahabharata. Following that devastating conflict, Queen Gandhari cursed Krishna, foretelling the destruction of his whole lineage. And 36 years later, that curse is fulfilled when a hunter accidentally shoots Krishna, causing him to depart the mortal world. But when the Pandavas placed his body on a funeral pyre, something miraculous happens. His physical body turns to ash, sure, but his heart survives the flames. It just keeps beating with this intense energy. Arjuna took this indestructible heart, placed it on a wooden plank, and sent it down the river. Eventually, it washes up on the coast of Odisha, where Vishwavasu, the leader of the local Sabar tribe, recognized its divine power and started worshipping it secretly in a hidden cave. All right, enter King Indradraumna. He was this devout ruler who was just desperate to find this divine idol. He ends up sending his priest, Vidyapati, who actually cleverly married the tribal leader's daughter just to find the secret cave.
The king finally locates the spot, but the idol had vanished. However, the king then has a divine dream telling him to go to the Puri coast. There, he'd find this massive, giant floating neem tree, and he was supposed to carve the new idols from it. But guys, this was no ordinary tree. When he brought it back, literally every single artisan who tried to carve it completely failed. The wood was practically unbreakable. It just shattered their iron chisels and hammers into pieces. So how do you carve the uncarvable, right? Well, an old man who's widely believed to be the divine architect Lord Vishvakarma shows up with one very strict condition. He demanded to be locked inside a room with the wood for 21 days. And he warned them, nobody can enter, nobody can even open the door. So for over 2 weeks, you just hear these rhythmic sounds of chiseling echoing from the room. But then, on the 15th day, the sound just abruptly stopped. The king's wife gets terrified that the old man had died of starvation in there, and she pushes the anxious king to break his promise and open the door early. The moment they crack that door open, the architect literally vanishes into thin air. Left behind are the 3 massive, block-like wooden idols of Jagannath, Balabhadra, and Subhadra. And they're uniquely missing their hands and feet, simply because the work was interrupted. A divine voice then declared that the powerful heart should be placed inside the unfinished idol of Jagannath. All right, moving on to the Bhavishya Malika prophecies of the end times. Let's shift our focus here to a completely different but equally fascinating part of the temple's history.
Just listen to this translation from the Bhavishya Malika. It's a 500-year-old prophetic Odia text written by the mystic Achyutananda. It says, "Many diseases will come, a great disease will spread. People will stay locked in their homes, unable to step outside." Now, for millions of believers and locals, this isn't just some vague poetry. They view this ancient text as an astoundingly precise roadmap of modern global events. In fact, they point to this exact phrase as a direct, undeniable prediction of the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic and those massive global lockdowns. And it's not just global events, guys. The prophecies are deeply tied to bizarre anomalies at the temple itself, which are seen as ominous signs of the end of the Kali Yuga. The text actually predicted physical warnings. Like in May 2019, the massive cyclone Fani literally bent the heavy iron Neel chakra right on top of the temple. Then, on March 19, 2020, literally right as the pandemic was escalating globally, the sacred temple flag mysteriously catches fire. And then, incredibly bizarrely, in July 2020, vultures and eagles were seen resting on the temple dome. You might be wondering why that matters. Well, birds practically never fly over or land on the Jagannath Temple dome. It's actually a known anomaly of the site. Believers say the book even predicts future events, like the 3 chariots suddenly stopping together, rivers flowing backwards, and finally, the arrival of the Kalki avatar. Next up, we're looking at historical invaders versus divine intervention, clashes of empires. Let's explore what happened when massive armies tried to conquer this mysterious place. Back in 1558, the infamous and brutal Afghan general Kalapahad marched a Mughal army right into Puri, and his explicit goal was to destroy the temple. As his soldiers charged toward the main sanctum, swords in hand, the environment just inexplicably snaps. A sudden, totally unnatural darkness envelops the whole temple courtyard. And then, from the inner sanctum, this terrifying, blinding light erupts outwards. And it wasn't fire, it was something else, something profoundly overwhelming. The text actually states that seasoned, battle-hardened soldiers instantly fainted in terror. Panic rippled through the ranks, and the entire invading army literally dropped their weapons and fled for their lives without the defenders having to throw a single physical strike. Fast forward a few centuries, and a totally different kind of empire tried to impose its will. Between 1805 and 1806, British officials, specifically a Mr. Hunter, dismissed the temple's intense rituals as mere superstition and actually called them barbaric. Fearing the massive, uncontrollable crowds, the British administration tried to ban the famous Rath Yatra, the huge chariot festival. But oh man, did they vastly underestimate the people's devotion. This triggered a massive public uprising. Millions of people took to the streets, they started building the chariots themselves, and they were chanting this simple, powerful defiance. If God won't walk, we won't. Faced with an utterly unmanageable statewide rebellion, the British Empire was actually forced to retreat. They reinstated the festival and vowed to never interfere with the temple's internal affairs ever again. Okay, let's talk about the temple's architecture for a second, because there is a fascinating trap hidden right in plain sight. At the main entrance, there are 22 steps, but you have to be incredibly careful not to step on the third one. It's known as the Yamashila. So according to the lore, Lord Yama, the god of death, actually complained that anyone who saw Jagannath was immediately cleansed of all their sins, which was basically leaving Yama's realm completely empty. So, to balance this out, Jagannath placed Yama on the third step. Stepping on it supposedly acts like this metaphysical reset button, wiping away all the good deeds you've accumulated and dooming your soul to Yamalok. So yeah, you might want to watch your step. And right at the very peak of the temple sits the massive Sudarshan Chakra. This thing brilliantly illustrates an engineering mystery that still totally baffles architects today. It's designed using what we might call an artificial illusion. Basically, no matter where you stand in the entire city of Puri, no matter the angle, no matter the distance, when you look up at the top of that dome, the flat face of that heavy metal chakra always appears to be facing you directly. It's this ancient optical and structural anomaly that modern science still really struggles to fully explain. Now for my favorite part, the divine kitchen, physics-defying feasts. Let's head inside and look at the world's largest, most inexplicable kitchen operation. So the cooking process here literally defies basic physics. 7 clay pots, filled with ingredients, are stacked vertically, right on top of each other, and they are heated by a traditional, simple wood fire located strictly at the very bottom. Now, by every single law of thermodynamics, the bottom pot, the one closest to the heat, should cook first, right? But impossibly, the topmost pot, the one furthest away from the fire, actually finishes cooking first. Then the second from the top, all the way down to the bottom. It simply doesn't make any logical sense. And we gotta talk about the sheer scale of this. 200,000. That is the upper limit of the number of people fed by this exact kitchen every single day. Using only those stacked clay pots and wood fires, hundreds of cooks managed to prepare a feast for anywhere between 50,000 to 200,000 devotees daily. That's like feeding a whole city. But wait, the anomalies of this food, which they call the Mahaprasad, don't stop there. Absolutely zero modern fuel or gas is used in this massive industrial-scale operation. Even more astonishingly, despite the completely unpredictable daily crowd size, the food never falls short. And at the end of the day, not a single grain is ever wasted. Plus, in a kitchen processing hundreds of quintals of vegetables, spices, and greens daily, there's absolutely no odor and not a single fly to be found. Back in the 18th century, a Maratha official actually tried to mathematically prove this was all a trick by deliberately and secretly changing the number of pots used. But even with the tampered variables, the exact perfect amount of food was still produced. It actually led him to vow never to interfere with the kitchen ever again. So, what does this all mean? Where does science end and faith begin? Honestly, in the Jagannath Temple, the line isn't just blurred, it doesn't really seem to exist at all. Is it an ancient technological reactor shrouded in myth? Is it the literal beating heart of the divine protecting its followers from invasions and somehow defying the laws of physics in the kitchen? Or is it just a brilliant synthesis of ancient engineering, optical illusions, and truly unbreakable faith? Whatever you choose to believe, the mysteries of this temple continue to stand tall, challenging absolutely everything we think we know. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer.